I would also like to welcome all guests to the Sejm of the Republic of Poland and those participating online in today's assembly. I would like to also inform you that during our meeting we will connect with the President of Ukraine, Mr. Volodymyr Zelenskyy. Ladies and gentlemen, when 23 years ago we joined NATO, Poland joined a defense alliance which today, with its unity and strength, provides warranty of security and support that allows it to cover more and more countries. Today we meet so that in this difficult time we could emphasize the importance of that decision. I would now like to give the floor to the President of the Republic of Poland, Mr. Andrzej Duda. Distinguished Speaker of the Sejm, the Speaker of the Senate, distinguished Prime Minister, I would like to welcome the former Presidents of the Republic of Poland, Mr. Aleksander Kwaśniewski and Mr. Bronisław Komorowski. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, Deputy Speakers for the Sejm and the Senate, Deputy Chairman of the Council of Ministers, former Speakers of the Sejm, former Prime Ministers, the President of the Constitutional Tribunal, the National Assembly, ladies and gentlemen, Members of Parliament, Members of Parliament, of the European Parliament, the representatives of the central bodies of public administration, representatives of the Chancellery of the President of the Republic of Poland and of the Prime Minister of the Republic of Poland, of the Sejm of the Senate, representatives of the central and local governments, generals, officers, representatives of the Polish Army, Your Eminencies, Your Excellencies, representatives of the churches and religious communities, Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, ambassadors, and especially the ambassadors of the member states of NATO, I would like to give you an especially warm welcome today. We have His Excellency Ambassador of Ukraine, Mr. Andrzej Breszczyca, with us today. I am very glad and I would like to give you a very warm welcome, Mr. Ambassador. Thank you very much, distinguished guests and all the distinguished participants in this National Assembly. The National Assembly always happens in exceptional moments for Poland, and it is so also today, on the threshold of a very important anniversary, the anniversary of Poland, Czech Republic, and Hungary joining NATO. On the 12th of March 1991, the post-Yaltan world order finished and the division into different spheres of influence. By joining NATO, we fully joined the Western community in which we were always culturally, and then we joined it also politically and militarily. This is a great event for Poland and for the world. Today, unfortunately, is not the moment for joyful celebration. We are meeting in a dramatic time during the greatest world security crisis since the end of the World War II. The unprovoked aggression of Russia on the independent Ukraine shocked the world. For over 2 weeks, the Ukrainian army and nation offer heroic resistance to the aggressor. Our neighbors give the whole world an example of what true valor means and what it means to love our shared values, freedom, sovereignty and democracy, and they pay the highest price for this. Ukrainian cities are bombarded. Houses and housing communities are bombarded, as well as schools and hospitals. People are perishing. Civil society is perishing. And such attacks from the Russian aggressors have genocide characteristic because this is what we call shooting to the civilians who are not in the army. And we have to do everything so that these criminals stood before the international tribunals and respond and bear responsibility for their crimes. This is important for the international community. Vladimir Putin, when he started this cruel war, drew directly on the heritage of the Soviet Union, this empire of evil, as it was once called by a great American president and friend of Poland, Ronald Reagan. What Russia is doing in Ukraine shows that it still is the empire of evil, that it was never buried, and today is showing its worst face again. Here it's worth to remember the significant words of Professor Zbigniew Brzezinski. Without Ukraine, Russia ceases to be an empire, but with Ukraine subordinated and overpowered, it automatically becomes an empire. Russia can either be an empire or a democracy, but it cannot be both. We see today clearly what Russia has chosen, and we see clearly what Ukraine has chosen and what it is defending. It defends democracy and freedom, an honest world. Nobody will better understand the pain and suffering of the Ukrainian nation than we, Poles, who went through so much during our history, especially the history of the 20th century. We also fought many times for our freedom, for your freedom. Polish soldiers fought on all fronts of the Second World War, from Narvik to Tobruk, from the Battle of England to Monte Cassino and Berlin. We remember the valor of the Home Army and the Warsaw Uprising. We see still the destroyed Warsaw, destroyed by the Nazi Germany. And this is why from here, from Poland, from Warsaw, the plea reaches the whole world. We cannot allow Russia to overpower the free and independent democratic Ukraine. We have to increase our efforts and support for the fighting Ukrainian nation. Let Kiev and other Ukrainian cities not share the fate of the destroyed city of Warsaw. Let's stop the evil. This is a challenge for the whole free world. Ladies and gentlemen, dear compatriots, despite the long fight on all fronts of the Second World War, Poland, as a result of Yalta arrangements, was in the Soviet area of influence. Against our will, we found ourselves behind the Iron Curtain. The generation of our grandparents, parents, and many of us present here were dreaming to change the course of history. The peaceful revolution of solidarity and regaining sovereignty by our country after 1989, and finally the dissolution of the Soviet Union made it possible. And to fulfill these efforts, the crowning part was joining the NATO by Poland. That was the dream come true. When at the beginning of the 1990s, to be exact in 1991 and 92, the Prime Minister Jan Olszewski, exactly from this place, as the first one, announced that Poland would put efforts to join NATO. Many thought that it was impossible to achieve because we still had Soviet armies stationing in our country, and there were many lively disputes regarding the settlements of the past accounts. But thanks to joint efforts, it worked. We managed to set apart this cause from the political disputes. And let the fact be symbolic here that the first discussions about Poland's joining NATO were started by Lech Wałęsa and ended by President Aleksander Kwaśniewski. And it was also an effort of Polish governments from the right to the left. Also, the efforts of the Polish diplomacy and Polish army. I would like to thank all of you who contributed towards this from the heart for all your efforts. Your conduct is an example to us. When on the 12th of March 1999, in the American city of Independence, the Polish Minister of Foreign Affairs, Bronisław Geremek, passed on the act of Poland's joining NATO, we could all feel great satisfaction. Before, on the 11th of February, the Sejm adopted the ratifying act, and later, 1 week later, it was signed by Aleksander Kwaśniewski. On the 23rd of February, Jerzy Buzek ratified the treaty. It was a historical moment, an incredible time in the history of our homeland. But let's remember that the idea of Poland's joining NATO, as well as other former Eastern Bloc countries' NATO, was not universally supported in the West, which is why what was key was the support of the United States of America, and that was irrespective of political factions. We started our discussions with the President George Bush Sr., and the process of joining NATO was completed during the presidency of Bill Clinton, who here in Warsaw said, "Today Poland is joining NATO. Poland is taking its place in the community of democracy. Never anyone else will decide about Poland's fate. Never will you be denied the right to freedom. Poland is coming home." And so it happened. We came home because the sovereign and independent Poland will always be a home of freedom and democracy, and we will defend this home with all our strength. In that time, we could count on support of many tried friends of Poland, including the current President of the United States. Let me remind you that in the 1990s, Joe Biden, then a senator, an influential member of the Foreign Affairs Committee of the Senate, was one of the leaders supporting Poland's joining of NATO. The joining of NATO by Poland, he described as wiping out the historical wrong done to Poland by Józef Stalin. Mr. President, Poland thanks you. Still, we need to emphasize here that, like Joe Biden said, as we know, Poland has never come to terms with this historical wrong done to us. Also, during the time of Soviet domination over our country, a lot of people were forced to make dramatic choices. They had to show valor. The symbol of it was the great Polish patriot and the first Polish officer in NATO, Colonel Ryszard Kukliński. Today, post-mortem, General of Brigade since 2016. It was my honor to grant this posthumous rank to the Colonel. But I would like to thank for this initiative to the former Minister of National Defense, Mr. Antoni Macierewicz. This is the issue of Poland's honor. Thank you. the service of Colonel Kuklinski towards Poland's joining NATO will never be forgotten, just like the service of many Poles who found themselves outside of Poland and who really served, like the former director of the radio Free Europe, Jan Nowak-Niedzielski, who, as a representative of the American Polish community, was promoting our efforts. Or also Professor Zbigniew Brzeziński, the security advisor of Jimmy Carter, the American president. Also, Jan Nowak-Niedzielski and Zbigniew Brzeziński were the best ambassadors of our cause in the United States, just like all the Polish community in the United States. And their service in this cause, in the cause championing Polish freedom, are invaluable. It is a symbolic fact that today, when we still are under a serious threat for the Europe's and world security, son of Professor Mark Brzeziński, who is the ambassador of the United States in Poland. Mr. Ambassador, thank you for joining us today.
Ladies and gentlemen and distinguished compatriots, Poland is safe. By joining NATO, we became part of the biggest defense alliance in the history of the world, alliance which is based on defense of common values, and for more than 70 years it's been providing security to its members. It's been providing it in a continuous, unwavering way, following the principle under Article 5 of the Washington Treaty, one for all for one. As Poland, we are always ready to fulfill our commitments. On many occasions, we have proven that one can count on us, fighting arm in arm with the American army and other armies in the alliance in Iraq, Afghanistan. Membership of Poland in NATO is a symbol of our national unity. The support for membership among the general public in Poland is one of the highest across NATO. Security is provided by the strength of alliances, but most of all by the strength of own army. That's why we've been modernizing and developing the Polish army, reinforcing defense capacities and reinforcing our army. We are rebuilding it. The current situation requires bigger efforts today of us all. That's why the Parliament is working on the Act to defend homeland, which provides for increasing expenses for modernization and development of the Polish army up to 3% next year. It is a priority for our country, and we can clearly see that. Thank you to MPs and senators from all parties for your declaration to support the Act to defend our homeland. And I hope that these matters will be the ones in which we will be able to create agreement across parties. Just like was the case when Poland was trying to join NATO 20 years ago. Polish army has to be more numerous, but it has to be better armed and equipped to make sure a Polish soldier can serve effectively and safely. I talked about this recently to the President of the United States, Joe Biden, as well as yesterday with Vice President Kamala Harris when she was here in Warsaw yesterday. Cooperation with the United States has never been better. The success of NATO summit in 2016 in Warsaw has resulted in the fact that the eastern flank has been reinforced, and we have American soldiers stationing in Poland permanently. Poland is today in NATO, and NATO armies are in our homeland. So this shows that we are no more Soviet zone of influence, and I deeply believe we will never be. Strategic Polish-American relations have been developing regardless of who is sitting in the White House. Decision about the presence of American forces in Poland was taken by the administration of Barack Obama, and under Donald Trump, the forces have increased, and now this process is continued by President Joe Biden. It's very important from point of view of security of our country and the whole region. Now, to reinforce cooperation in Middle Eastern Europe, we established at Bucharest nine NATO members from Middle Europe, from Central Europe, and we cooperate in this format to prepare for NATO summits. We also created 3 Seas initiatives that is one where countries from around 3 seas cooperate. Thanks to this, we are even better heard in the European Union and in NATO. All these elements form an architecture of security. All of them are very important, and we have to cooperate on each of them for the security of Poland and the whole region. The necessity of reinforcing of the Eastern NATO flank is perfectly understood by Jens Stoltenberg. It's also thanks to his work, understanding, kindness, and huge determination, understanding of threats. We are now better prepared to face the challenge being Russia's aggression on free, independent Ukraine and the threat to the free world posed by Russia. I'd like to thank Jens Stoltenberg, Secretary General, and we will be talking about it in Poland and in Central and Eastern Europe. We will always remember about this. Dear compatriots, ladies and gentlemen, on 24th of February, we woke up in a totally different world, in a new reality. A lot of theses as presented at the International Forum were brutally rebutted. Also, theses concerning NATO. They said that the alliance has lost its, that it shouldn't exist. But today we see it's not true. We see that those who were saying it were very wrong. It's us, Poles and representatives of other countries of our region, were right by warning the West from Russian imperialism, from making ourselves dependent from Russian commodities, which will be used as weapons in possible conflict. From limiting the role of United States in Europe, from attempts at juxtaposing against each other NATO and the European Union. It's not time for bitter satisfaction. Today we need unity, unity, and one more time unity in the alliance and in the European Union. That is why, let me reiterate one more time, Poland appreciates membership in NATO, in the EU. These are foundations of our security. It's the Polish reason of state. President Lech Kaczyński understood it perfectly. That is why he was also trying to accomplish that in the countries of our region. We all remember how he was fighting to make sure that Ukraine and Georgia received the right to membership in NATO and in the EU. Before the Alliance Summit in 2008, he wrote a special letter where he reminded special circumstances of West Germany joining NATO in 1955, and he wrote, the situation of West Germany was much more complicated than one of Ukraine or Georgia. Some countries did not accept borders of German states set after the Second World War, but NATO was able to take a courageous decision to accept West Germany, the most important decision about enlarging NATO. Had one listened to President Kaczynski back then, had one taken courageous decisions, if the naive position not to provoke Russia hadn't prevailed, Ukraine would have been in NATO today, and there wouldn't have been aggression in 2014. We wouldn't have had the current war, and history would have been different. Today, each day, the Ukrainian army and nation are fighting with the Russian aggressor and showing huge heroism, proving that they fully deserve membership in the alliance. Courageous leadership of Volodymyr Zelenskyy impersonates all values on which the Western community is based. The free world today has a face of President Zelenskyy. However, the decision on whether Ukraine will join NATO has to belong to the Ukrainian nation and its leaders. These are the rules of democracy. And I believe deeply that free, sovereign, independent Ukraine will still follow these principles because I believe it will win. They, Ukrainians, have to have the right to take the decision whether after the end of war they want to be part of the alliance or not, whether they or maybe they opt a different pathway to secure their security. No one has the right to take this decision for them. No one, and we will never agree to a new Yalta. Patriots, ladies and gentlemen, Vladimir Putin, by brutally attacking Ukraine, wanted to establish a new world order. He wants to change the course of history. As he is saying, he wants to bring back times from before 1997, from before the decision of enlarging NATO to the east. In fact, he would like to come back to the times of the Soviet Union and division of Europe into zones of influence. Division of the world. But Russian aggression on Ukraine has brought exactly a reverse outcome. It united again this whole transatlantic community. It showed how important NATO's role is and the significance of American presence in Europe. It confirmed the leadership of the United States in the area of security in the world. It brought about a change of policy in the European Union. It united public opinion in Europe as well as communities, societies of Western states. I don't know whether this is how Putin imagined his success. The answer to this great evil caused by Vladimir Putin and Russia to Ukraine and Europe is great kindness. Here in our country, from the first hours, Poles opened their hearts and rushed to help their Ukrainian brothers in need. I salute millions of compatriots who each day have been responding with kindness to evil. It is from the bottom of their hearts that they try to wipe evil by accepting refugees in their homes, helping in transport, organizing charities, and giving donations, paying money to help Ukraine. seeing heroism of the Ukrainian nations that's fighting for freedom of its homeland, for its homes, security, and the future of their children, but also seeing huge solidarity of Poles and other nations, I deeply believe that kindness and good will prevail. Good has to prevail. I believe that Ukraine will defend itself from Russian aggression, that millions of its citizens will be able to come back to their homes, which collectively as the West we will help them rebuild, that Ukraine will join the European Union. We will be supporting it always, everywhere. I believe that values will prevail, the ones that we jointly support, values on which the whole Western community is founded and which NATO is supposed to defend. Long live NATO. Long live free Ukraine. Long live Poland. God bless our homeland.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Ladies and gentlemen, I think that on behalf of all of us, I would like to welcome the President of Ukraine, Mr. Volodymyr Zelenskyy, who will be connecting with us, who with his conduct and his attitude with other representatives of Ukraine and the whole Ukrainian nation who is giving resistance to this aggression, is giving a great example of valor and heroism. Now, I would like to give the floor to Ukrainian's President, Mr. Volodymyr Zelenskyy. Distinguished Mr. President and my friend Andrzej, distinguished Speaker for the Sejm and the Speaker for the Senate, ladies and gentlemen, members of Parliament and senators, brothers and sisters. When I became a president in 2019, what was felt at that time was that we would need to go a long way with Poland because the atmosphere was cool in our relations, in our attitudes to each other. So that's how it was, but I wanted to go this way, the way towards the warmth, as quickly as possible. We knew that by nature we are close to each other, both the Ukrainians and the Poles. I remember my first meetings with Andrzej Duda. From meeting to meeting, things were changing. The coolness disappeared. We understood each other. As a Ukrainian with a Pole, as Europeans, as friends, as parents who like their families and understand that our children should live in the world of the same shared good values, that they are to live in a world where nations are independent, where there is freedom, where family is important, where there is no room for military aggression. It's supposed that number 7 brings fortune. Well, Ukraine has 7 neighbors. Does it bring us good fortune? Well, the whole world knows the answer today. The 78 Russian children know it best, those who were killed in Russian military attacks. This is the neighbor who brought poverty and war to our country. The neighbor who acts without God's blessing. When there is someone who is brutal in its attack, we need someone you can count on. We can count on. When somebody attacks you, you need a friend who will reach out to you. In the early morning on the 24th of February, I had no doubt who such a person would be, who will tell me you will not be left alone with your enemy. And indeed, this happened. I am very grateful to my Polish brothers and sisters who are supporting us, who are with us, and this is natural. On the very first day of the war, it was clear that the Ukrainians, it was clear both for the Ukrainians and the Poles that there are no borders between us. Physical, historical, personal, human. After the 16 days of this war, the Ukrainian Duma and the Ukrainians' honor and Ukrainians' pride and Poland's support help us. Between our nations there is peace, peace between neighbors, peace between brothers. And I would like these words to also be heard by our neighbors, Belarusians. We are close to each other. We are neighbors. We should also be brothers with you, with Belarusians. And of course, we will achieve that, ladies and gentlemen, our Polish brothers and sisters. For a long time, many parties tried to convince us that Poles and Ukrainians are far from each other and that they lead different lives. Why did they do that? Let me remind you the words of the former president of Poland, Lech Kaczyński, said in Tbilisi. We know very well, today it's the Georgia, tomorrow Ukraine, then the Baltic states, and maybe then the turn will come for Poland. On the 24th of February, this terrible tomorrow that he was talking about happened for Ukraine. And today we are fighting for the Baltic states and for Poland so that they wouldn't have to face that time. And we are fighting together. Together we are 90 million people. Together we can do everything. This is a historical mission of Poland and of Ukraine, to be leaders, to be together, and to take Europe from this precipice and from this danger, to stop Europe from becoming a victim of this aggression. Ladies and gentlemen, we can do it. Yesterday, we could see what the European nations were talking about. We saw who is the real leader and who is fighting for the unified Europe, who is fighting for the joint European security, and who was trying to stop us, who was trying to stop you. We understand why Poles know how to fight together with others, fight for freedom, for the European freedom, for Europe. Remember a huge tragedy that happened in 2010 in Smolensk. You remember how the circumstances of this crash were investigated. We understand what it meant to you and what it meant for you to face the silence of those who knew the circumstances very well. But we're still looking towards our neighbor, our brothers and sisters. I feel that we have already built an amazing alliance. Perhaps informal yet, but this is an alliance that is based on reality, not written on paper. This is an alliance that stems from the warmth of our hearts and not from the words of politicians at high levels. The way you accepted our friends, our people who were welcome in your homeland, where they sought refuge against this evil that happened to our country. There is over 1.5 million of Ukrainian citizens here, and they don't feel as foreigners here. They were accepted in families with the spirit of brotherhood and kindness. and you don't want anything in return. You do it from the heart, as between friends, as in the family, which is why I just appeal to you, my friend Andrzej, dear Agata. I can say that we have already united ourselves. We united ourselves like this great Paul, John Paul II, said, that we will together strive for freedom and create freedom. I am convinced that we will be defending freedom together with you. As much as we need to, I am grateful for your help that you have already provided. Help from your state, from your nation. I am grateful for all the efforts that you make to protect the Ukrainian airspace. I believe that we will manage to achieve something very important. God willing, if we win this war, we will share with you our victory. We'll share it with our brothers and sisters. This is our greatness, but also your greatness. This is a battle for our freedom, but also for your freedom. This is a joint history of great nations.
Bardzo dziękujemy panu.
Thank you very much to Mr. President Zelensky. Now we will hear from the Secretary General of NATO, Mr. Jens Stoltenberg.
President Duda, dear Andrzej, dear members of the Polish National Assembly, many congratulations on the anniversary of Poland's accession to NATO. 23 years ago, your country joined NATO, and Poland has been a highly valued and committed ally ever since, contributing to our shared security in many different ways, including with troops for our missions and operations, regular contributions to air and maritime patrols, and hosting one of NATO's multinational battle groups. Let me also thank Poland for the tremendous solidarity you have shown at this dangerous time. You are generously hosting many hundreds of thousands of refugees fleeing Putin's war in Ukraine and providing humanitarian assistance in what is the worst refugee crisis since World War II. You are also providing military assistance to help Ukraine exert its right of self-defense. This war affects the lives of innocent Ukrainians. It affects the security of Europe and the entire rules-based international order. NATO allies have been supporting our partner Ukraine for many years, and allies have stepped up significantly in the last few weeks and months, including with large quantities of anti-tank and anti-missile equipment to help save Ukrainian lives. NATO's core task is to protect and defend all allies. We have a responsibility to ensure this conflict does not escalate beyond Ukraine, because this would be even more dangerous, destructive, and deadly. So allies are stepping up our defensive presence in Poland and across the eastern part of our alliance, with thousands more troops and hundreds more aircraft and ships, more than doubling our presence in recent weeks. Together with you, Mr. President, I was at Vask Air Base just a few days ago, meeting Polish forces working together with colleagues from the United States. It was truly inspiring to see their professionalism and dedication. This sends a clear message that NATO allies stand together. We will protect Poland and defend every inch of Allied territory. One for all and all for one. Whatever Moscow seeks to achieve through violence and aggression, it will fail. It is failing already. President Putin wants less NATO on Russia's borders. He is getting more NATO. He wants to divide Europe and North America, but we stand more united than ever. He wants to hold European nations hostage with Russian oil and gas. Instead, he is pushing countries to more rapidly diversify their supplies. And most of all, President Putin wants to take away the freedom and independence of Ukraine. But brave Ukrainians are fighting for their freedom and for their future. NATO strongly supports the right of each country to live in peace, to be free and choose its own path. More than 3 decades ago, Poland made its own free choice to go down the Euro-Atlantic path and join NATO. You inspired many other countries in Central and Eastern Europe to follow that same path. Our open door policy has been an historic success, spreading democracy and freedom across Europe. To this day, we remain committed to it. It is enshrined in our founding treaty, and neither Russia nor anybody else has a veto on whether any country becomes a NATO member. It is a sovereign decision. We must all respect it. Poland's accession to NATO 23 years ago has made your country stronger and more secure. And it has made our alliance stronger and more secure. I know I can count on Poland's continued commitment to NATO in the future. Congratulations again on this anniversary, and thank you very much.
Szanowni Państwo,
Ladies and gentlemen, I would now like to ask all of you to rise, and I would like to ask Mr. Tomasz Grodzki, the Speaker of the Senate, to read the resolutions adopted by the Sejm of the Republic of Poland and the Senate of the Republic of Poland on the 23rd anniversary of Poland's membership in NATO.
Uchwała
Resolution of the Sejm of the Republic of Poland and the Senate of the Republic of Poland on the 23rd anniversary of Poland's membership in NATO. The Sejm of the Republic of Poland and the Senate of the Republic of Poland, appreciating the historical importance of Poland's joining NATO and the formal becoming of the full-fledged member of the treaty together with Czech Republic and Hungary on the 12th of March 1991, want to commemorate this event on the threshold of the 23rd anniversary. Poland having some tragic experience in the 20th century, fighting two totalitarian regimes, the Nazi regime and the communist regime, took efforts in political consensus to become embedded in the structure of the Western world that is based on democratic principles and sovereignty of nations. The expression of that is the presence of the Republic of Poland in NATO, the membership of which is considered to be a priority of Polish foreign policy. Appreciating the involvement and work of all those who contributed to us achieving this goal, and the dream of a Polish society to join NATO to become true, the Sejm and the Senate of the Republic of Poland would like to express their thanks and gratitude and respect. The Sejm and Senate of the Republic of Poland support keeping the open door policy of NATO, which contributed to historical success of the alliance, broadening the sphere of freedom and security across Europe. We defend the rights of each sovereign state to decide about their future and to choose the alliances, and we reject any attempts of creating spheres of influence in Europe. The security warranty granted by NATO, and in particular Article 5 of the treaty, which assumes the collective defense together with using military forces in order to restore and maintain safe of the North Atlantic area, constitute the foundation of the world order and the protection. The Sejm and Senate of the Republic of Poland emphasize the importance of the North Atlantic Treaty Organization for the world's security and safety, cannot be indifferent to the current events, the military aggression of the Russian Federation on the sovereign country of Ukraine and Ukrainian nation. The criminal regime of Russia, breaking all legal norms and international obligations, attacked Ukraine, causing the unprecedented since the Second World War political, economic, and humanitarian crisis. The Sejm and the Senate of the Republic of Poland want to commemorate the 23rd anniversary of Poland's joining NATO, and it appeals the governments and parliaments of the member states of NATO and the associated states to continue solidarity in actions that serve maintaining world security and to counteract Russian aggression in a firm way, and to counteract their breaking international law, including humanitarian law. The Sejm and the Senate of the Republic of Poland call upon you to consistently strengthen the North Atlantic ties and to counteract the Russian aggression and to provide Ukraine with comprehensive support, which can contribute effectively to close the hostilities. Signed, the Speaker of the Sejm, Elżbieta Witek, and the Speaker. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Ladies and gentlemen, this closes our National Assembly. I close the National Assembly of the members of Parliament and senators of Poland on the 23rd anniversary of Poland's joining NATO. Thank you very much.